While building in The Sims 4, do you ever just stop for a second and wonder what the f are these prices? Why is a single roll of toilet paper with the toilet paper holder 50 simoleons? What makes these salt and pepper shakers 35 simoleons? What about the price of this rocket I can build in my backyard? And how does this compare to real life?
All engines are started. We have ignition.
No, seriously. Let's take a closer look at this rocket ship. How the heck does this hunk of metal cost so little? What would this cost in real life? Like in real Canadian dollars? How do they even get all of the materials for this? I've read somewhere that maybe it costs so little because they get the metals from Sixum. Maybe the materials are easy to make there. Maybe SimNation and Sixum have a good working relationship. I like this theory and I think perhaps maybe it could be true, but in-game, this isn't explicitly stated anywhere. So I have to assume this isn't the case, you know, for science and everything. And that leads me back. What is happening behind the scenes? Why does the cost of a full-on rocket ship cost less than my real-life car? And how can we find out? Thankfully, there's this real-life thing called the Big Mac Index. The Big Mac Index does exactly what you would expect it to do, based on the name. It compares the price of McDonald's Big Macs in different countries, converting everything to US dollars because, of course, that's the global default. This is a lighthearted but widely used economic indicator created by The Economist to compare the purchasing power parity of different currencies. Basically, it shows how much a currency is over or undervalued compared to the US dollar. Today, we're going to use it to convert simoleons and to compare the economies. Spoiler alert, one of them at face value doesn't make any sense at all. I'll let you guess which one. It's the one where your fridge breaks every 3 days and, you know, it rains in your basement. Sometimes, because the devs don't fix that bug. There is a small, teeny tiny little issue with this method. SimNation, the fictional country where all of the Sims games take place, doesn't have McDonald's. In fact, it doesn't even have a fast food equivalent. Not one. There is, however, this American food stall from City Living, and this sells burgers, but that's not a Big Mac. There's too many variables because I don't know what's on this. You know? I want something a little more simple. Something as simple as water and coffee grounds. Sims 4 does have coffee, and McDonald's has coffee too. So instead of the Big Mac Index, we're going with a coffee index. In The Sims 4, coffee comes in one size for 5 simoleons. I'm going to assume that size would be a medium in real life because that's typically what regular means. Unless you're at Tim Hortons, which in that case, why are you there, girl? I'm Canadian, so my medium-sized coffee from McDonald's is $1.25 Canadian. I tried to figure out how much a medium coffee costs in the US using McDonald's website, but of course, there are no prices listed. Why would there be? It's only a restaurant. I guess I could have changed my Uber Eats location to somewhere in the States, but that felt like a lot of work for a cup of theoretical coffee. So I asked ChatGPT and it told me it could cost anywhere from $1.69 to $2.09 USD. So let's go with the average, $1.89. Sims pay 5 simoleons for a cup of joe and Americans pay $1.89 USD. That means 1 simoleon is worth about 0.378 American cents, which honestly makes more sense than half the stuff in The Sims. This got me wondering, has anyone else done this before? You know, figured out the simoleons to real life money conversion rate? That Google search led me to a Reddit post, as all good research does, where someone concluded the simoleons are roughly equivalent to the East Caribbean dollar. I looked it up, and at the time of writing this, 1 East Caribbean dollar is worth 0.37 cents in American cents. Very close to our simoleon value. Suspiciously close. I'm not saying Maxis modeled their in-game economy after the Eastern Caribbean, but I'm also not saying that. Moving forward, that's the conversion rate I'll be using. East Caribbean simoleons it is. Speaking of the difference between simoleons and dollars, let's take a look at how much money you could actually save with instant gaming. The Sims 4 businesses and hobbies would run you 96 simoleons, or in real life about 35.87. That's about 21% off the regular price if you grab it through instant gaming. Click my link in the description to check it out, because why pay full price when instant gaming could save you simoleons? Alright, we gotta go back to the classic example of why The Sims 4 pricing is completely out of pocket. That iconic single roll of toilet paper on a holder costs a whopping 50 simoleons, which is about $18.50 USD. I looked into actual toilet paper prices, yes, this is how I spend my free time, figured out the cost of a single roll and a holder, and it came up with $15.73, or 42.51 simoleons. That's not that far off, to be honest. Side note, if you want to check out where I'm pulling all these numbers from, I linked everything in the video description, unless prices change or the items vanish off the face of the internet, in which case that's on capitalism, not me, okay? Next, I want to look at something basic and straightforward. A smoke detector. In-game, there's a very basic model. Actually, there's only one model, so I didn't really have a choice. I couldn't tell if it was battery powered or wired in, but either way it'll run your Sims 75 simoleons, which is about $27.75. In real life, a basic battery powered smoke detector from your friendly neighborhood American Home Depot is around $9.43, which is $25.49 simoleons. Isn't that interesting? Once again, the pricing isn't actually completely bonkers, and that kind of confuses me a little bit. I was led to believe one thing, and it's not true, maybe? Now let's talk about the item that really has me questioning everything. The rocket ship. We're going with the base game version, the one that doesn't need to be unlocked. It costs 5,000 simoleons, which is a measly $1,850 plus 10 cents. But wait, it costs an extra 1,000 simoleons to build, so let's tack that on. Okay, we're up to $2,220. 13 cents. And sure, that feels like a steal if you're trying to DIY your way to the moon. I have a strong suspicion that in reality, building a fully functional rocket ship costs a teeny bit more than a couple grand. Just a smidge. Since Sims can apparently launch into space and land on other planets like it's no big deal, we needed a real world comparison. So I looked at Apollo 17, the last spacecraft to land on the moon back in 1972. According to Planetary.org, the cost of building rockets between 1960 and 1973 was 8.1 billion American dollars. Adjusted for inflation, that's about 81 billion today. In simoleons, that's 218,906,550,107 and 20 cents. No big deal or anything. Yeah, safe to say the rocket ship price in The Sims 4 is a little unrealistic. That's not even accounting for fuel, hiring astronauts, sourcing actual rocket grade materials, or, you know, basic engineering and the time spent on that. There are tons of items we could have looked into, for example, something cozier, beds. In real life, buying a decent bed means paying for the mattress, maybe a box spring, a frame, pillows, sheets, and let's be real, probably more than one pillow and set of sheets unless you like to live in chaos. In The Sims 4, it's all one item. Boom, done. One-click shopping. Congrats. Happy for you. Nice. But yeah, in real life, you'd most likely spend way more than your Sims ever would, unless you're just really into inflatable mattresses and calling it a day. Okay, alright, but the salaries and careers in the game are ridiculous. I feel like none of it makes any sense, right? I think it's safe to assume that it's kind of all over the place. And so we're gonna take a look at that and see. We're going to look at one single career path at 3 different tiers, the lowest, middle of the line position, and the highest position there is. I decided to use the police officer career path from Get to Work because it had 10 positions and it felt the most realistic. Honestly, I wanted something easy to be able to find job postings for. Okay, warning, I am going to be rounding the numbers up or down here, so you can see the exact number on screen, but I am rounding. Keep that in mind, it's a mouthful. It's also safe to say that everyone is working full-time, 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, you know, that sort of thing. When your sim enters the police force, they're a cadet. They make 22 simoleons an hour, 198 simoleons a day, or 51,000 simoleons, or $19,000 for 52 weeks. aka 1 human year. Having said that, Sims don't live through 1 human year. Their seasons are different lengths from ours. With seasons installed, the player has a choice between 7, 14, or 28 days per season. For this video, we're going to be going for the longest setting, 28 days. This is simply because that felt more like our calendar and was the least ridiculous option for this video. Therefore, 28 days per seasons and 4 seasons a year means a sim year is 16 weeks long. In 16 weeks, a cadet would make 16,000 simoleons or $6,000. On the other hand, a real-life police officer cadet earns an average of roughly $45,000 or 122,000 simoleons. This means the cadet would make $13,800 or 37,400 simoleons for a sim calendar year. So yeah, no matter how you look at it, the sim is making less money for both a human and a sim year. And that's not even us getting into the whole no benefits thing. I hope your sim doesn't pull a muscle during a chase or anything like that, because workers' comp, never heard of her. The middle tier job position would be a senior detective in-game. The sim would make 85 simoleons an hour, equaling 765 simoleons a day, and 200,000 simoleons or $73,500 for a human year. For a sim year, the senior detective would make 60,000 simoleons or $23,000. In America, a senior detective investigator would make an average of $83,500 or 226,000 simoleons for a human year. In a sim year, the senior detective would be earning $26,000 or 69,500 simoleons. Once again, the sim is earning less than their human counterpart, though this time there isn't such a big difference, so maybe that's progress. You tell me. Finally, our highest rank in Sims 4 is Chief. The Chief makes 291 simoleons an hour, which equals 681,000 simoleons or $252,000 for a human year. For a sim year, this sim would be earning 209,500 simoleons or $77,500. The human equivalent, a chief of police, would earn on average $218,000 for a human year. So in simoleons, that is 588,000 simoleons. In a sim year, this chief would be earning $67,000 or 181,000 simoleons. Finally, the sim is actually earning more than their human counterpart. This was what I was expecting. What about you? So yeah, pretty much at every level, no matter what calendar you use, Sims are making less than their real life counterparts, except for the chief of police. But they're definitely not getting any of those cushy benefits like health insurance, dental, or a pension. But to be fair, Sims don't really need any of that stuff, and Sims don't go to school to enter the police force. No background checks, no entrance exams, not even a personality test. Just boop, congrats, you're a cop now. Try not to trip over your own feet. And climbing the ranks, yeah, good luck doing that in real life by just showing up and solving 5 cases, or doing 2 active career days. Also, let's be real, those real life salaries and benefits would absolutely vary depending on where the job is located. A chief of police in New York City is not going to have the same paycheck as a chief in a tiny rural Midwest town with 1 coffee shop. I wonder how much their coffee costs. That's wildly different from The Sims 4, where your chief of police salary stays the same whether you live in Del Sol Valley or are literally grilling hot dogs on the beach. So far, we've learned that for the most part, items cost similarly, and Sims make less simoleons and American money for similar job positions. That must mean housing would be similar too, right? Maybe. To determine housing, we're looking at one of the base game worlds, Willow Creek, and since that world is based on New Orleans, that will be our American equivalent. In The Sims 4, I removed all the furniture that wouldn't normally come with a house, but I left items like kitchen counters, appliances, lighting fixtures, wall and floor coverings, and plants or trees. Basically anything that would be a giant pain to take with you in real life. Additionally, I left things that would be more likely to be left behind if it was a real-life house being sold. For example, window coverings or planter boxes. You know, the surprise items that end up staying because no one wants to unscrew 18 brackets from drywall. I looked for lots that were in a similar situation. For example, if the sim lot is next to a river, I looked for a real-life house on a river. The sizing won't be exact since it's surprisingly difficult to find houses with the same number of beds and baths and a similar footprint. Turns out real-life homes tend to follow boring things like zoning laws, building codes, and the concept of functional plumbing. In other words, the lots in real life are generally much larger than in-game. Let's start with a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. This one is called Steamlit Single in Foundry Cove. It's on the smaller side, Since it's a 20 by 15 lot, it costs 12,856 simoleons, or $4,756.99. Our real-life one-bedroom, one-bath house located in New Orleans has a lot that is 2,178 square feet. It's worth $149,000, or $402,669 simoleons. Our two-bedroom, one-bath house in The Sims 4 is Crick Cabana in Foundry Cove. This lot is another small one at 20 by 15. It's worth 10,303 simoleons, or $3,812.33. The real-life two-bedroom, one-bath sits on a lot that's just over 30,000 square feet, and it's worth 209,000 American dollars, or 564,832 simoleons. Lastly, our 3-bedroom, 2-bath house is Brook Bungalow in Courtyard Lane. This one's on a 40 by 30 lot and is worth 58,241 simoleons, or $21,550.39. The New Orleans equivalent is located on a 4,800 square foot lot and is valued at $360,000, or $972,918 simoleons. You know, a totally casual gap of 914,676 simoleons, just pocket change. It's also good to note that buying a house in real life isn't exactly the same as in-game. In Sims 4, you just click on the house and you decide if you want it furnished, unfurnished, or bulldozed. No big deal. In real life, you've got legal fees, home inspections, land transfer taxes, and the general existential dread of signing your life away. Housing in The Sims 4 is cheap compared to real life. This is something I think we all knew even before this video. But now we have numbers to prove just how unhinged it really is. For fun, because clearly we're all here for a good time, let's take a look at the cadet Sim salary over a Sim year, which again is 16 weeks, don't forget. If they're looking to buy that 1-bedroom, 1-bath Simlish house, that is more than half of their annual income. So, still wildly unrealistic, but at least they might qualify for a personal loan from Bella Goth. Or maybe that rich Sim will call them up and ask them to meet them at the hotel. They can get money that way. Now, our human cadet would make a lot more, right? Yes, but also their 1-bedroom, 1-bath house costs way more than their salary. That's about 31.33 times their yearly income, even though the human is technically earning around 2.3 times more than the Sim. Basically, in real life, you need to be a millionaire to afford a shoebox. Cool. I started off this whole journey fully expecting the Sims 4 economy to be completely broken, like off the rails, cartoonishly bizarre, especially when compared to real life. I mean, we've all seen the memes: a single roll of toilet paper, 50 simoleons, a rocket ship cheaper than my used vehicle, and honestly, that's what intrigued me the most. How on earth, or Sixum, could a flipping rocket ship cost less than an SUV with questionable brakes and a mysterious smell in the trunk? I was ready for chaos. But surprisingly, once you get past the truly bizarre stuff, I'm looking at you, decorative fruit bowl that costs more than a small dining table that Sims can't even actually use, the actual meat and potatoes of the Sims economy is weirdly comparable. Bizarre, right? Most of the items in build buy mode actually hover around real world prices. Even the career salaries, they're not that far off. I mean, they are lower than their human counterparts, but when you consider the fact that in real life you would spend a ton more time getting an education and applying for those jobs and then working, it's not that crazy that Sims earn less. After seeing all that, I thought maybe, just maybe, the housing market would follow suit. Going into this, I knew the rough prices of both American homes. Warning, don't look at the rough estimate of an average Canadian home. That is a truly soul-crushing reality I want to avoid for right now. And I kind of knew what Sims homes cost in-game. Like, I knew in-game the costs were less. I thought after everything else, maybe this would shock me. Maybe it's pretty similar. But nope. That's where the game just gave up on realism entirely. The housing market in The Sims 4 is a fever dream. Houses are so cheap, it's kind of offensive. If Sims can buy a 3-bedroom house on an entry-level salary, what are we doing wrong? So now I'm curious, what surprised you the most? Was it the rocket ship? Is there something else you want me to break down from the Sims 4 economy? Let me know in the comments. I live for this kind of chaos. Let's hang out again real soon, alright? Until then, stay happy, healthy, and hydrated. And maybe don't buy any rocket ships unless they come with free shipping. Bye!